Well, hello everyone. My name is Max7238, and welcome to Carrier Command 2. Now, it's been a very, very long time since I've been doing, you know, video recording like this, so it's going to be a bit scuffed. My dog's currently asleep behind me. He may interrupt the recording a little bit at some point. But we are here to talk about helping new players get started because this game is complicated as hell, and I've seen a lot of people asking some, you know, a lot of different questions. So I'm going to try and go over as much of it as I possibly can all in one video. I'm going to kind of go in the same direction as the guide that I wrote on Steam because that'll help keep me organized. I have a tendency to ramble, and I want to do that here. So we're going to start with the logistics screen, and part of the reason why we're going to start with the logistics screen is because I just made a very strange discovery recently about the inventory, but we'll go over that like probably towards the end of the video. So, actually, no. Makes the most sense to make sure that you're actually all started up and ready to go. So, I would assume that players are able to, get to the point where they're actually out in the open water on their own without a problem. And that is where we currently are. As you can see, we're off the coast of an island here. You can see some of the lights off in the distance. You can kind of see the island right there. And I have just recently captured this fuel island. So screens may look a little bit different. We'll get to that. But generally speaking, you're going to start from a warehouse island, and you'll have to capture various islands on the way, and each island that you capture is going to unlock associated blueprints and give you the ability to use that island's forge to create whatever material that it's specialized for. For example, the one I just captured is a fuel island, and it's got the little fuel icon on it right there. Now, this disclaimer, this is technically a modified save. I've modified the inventory myself just so that I can go through all of this demonstration quick, fast, and in a hurry, and without wasting anybody's time. So a lot of these values are nice and round, and there's a lot of stuff in here that I haven't technically unlocked in this save just yet. So we'll get around to that. Why do I have so few IR missiles? That's a bit weird. Anyway, so you have to manage your inventory in this game, and it's kind of a big part of it, so it's going to be a whole section of the video. But this is pretty much the command center where you'll be spending almost all your time. Now, there's some other things that you can do, there's other places that you can go, and maybe we'll have a tour later. I guess for now I'll hit the master light. I'm used to just having everything off. But there is this lift here that can take you down to the other decks, and there's some, neat little cosmetic things, such as, like, rooms and captain's quarters and that sort of stuff. And yes, believe it or not, that is the captain's quarters. But we'll get to all of that later. So once you're out on the seas and you've launched your carrier, you've probably heard this thing scream at you as you're launching. Suddenly you're told, okay, you need to go capture an island. They give you a couple of units to get you started, and so on. So one of the first things that you'll probably want to do, look at that power usage, is take notice of all the different buttons that you have at your disposal. So, of course, you have the logistics section, which has a screen for what your stock is, a map of the islands, and some more details on what they're actually, what they actually give you. So just as an example, that would give me noisemaker torpedoes, which would be a type of torpedo countermeasure, and it's a large munitions island. So you can see that it has a different icon than the others surrounding it, and I would be able to produce, should I take it, other large munitions. I already have a large munitions island down here, and I have light and medium bombs and all this stuff unlocked, and here's all the things that I do not have unlocked. So if I were to take any of these large munitions islands, they will show me an icon of what they're going to unlock, and that can help me prioritize what I want. So for example, if I don't have access to Albatross and Manta, I would really want to take this air chassis island here, because then I would be able to manufacture those units for a price. You build up your currency by holding islands, and the currency report does also exist, so you can see island control, amount of time. It'll give you the amount of money that you've had day by day, so you can sort of track that stuff, and it will also show you your deliveries. So for example, I just had a barge visit me that I had, and it has delivered to me a couple of 160mm shells and some 20mm autocannons for aircraft. So those are just some kind of extras. You can use those to check on the status of things. This is where you will affect your loadouts. You have 8 surface chassis and 8 air chassis, which you can outfit however you like. And then there are just mirrors of those screens for multiple players to be handling different things at once. Now, I usually don't play the game by myself. Usually I'm not the one handling the logistics. It's usually the guy I call my captain, Sandblaze, who is credited as the other contributor to the guide, rightly so. Him and I have played through most of the game together. And so a lot of my experience with the game comes from my time with him. And just in case you're curious, I've spent a lot of time on the game. I have like 161 hours. I've completed 2 full custom games of 64 islands. And I usually run custom games now where all of the islands are at least 2 shield, and there are a bunch of AI teams and all of that sort of thing. And right now I'm trying to get in with the modding community and improve myself so that hopefully I can participate in modding, because I really like this game, in case you couldn't tell by recording the guide. So, this one's pretty quick. This is your damage and repair screen. Basically, your carrier is separated into these sections, and each of them governs different weapon systems and capabilities that you have. For example, if your bridge is damaged, then your radar will go out. And as you can see, it's also raining out. If it was a heavy storm, the storm can also interfere with your radar. So there's 2 ways that you can lose access to your radar that aren't just flipping off the radar breaker, which you should never do. We'll get to flipping breakers in just a second. But so this will display how much fuel you have. Don't worry about these, they don't actually do anything. If you're playing campaign mode, this is where you'll receive transmissions for what's going on in the story. And then you have damage indication, and you have the screen up here that you can flip on and off repairs should you have taken any actual damage. Something that you're going to want to pay attention to is your power screens, because as you can see, weapons is taking up a lot of power. I am just going to pick a random direction and move in it, because I don't want to stay at this island anymore. So since I would like to leave, you have a couple of switches here that we'll get to. Since I would like to leave, I, generally am going to hit forward to control throttle, and then I'm going to steer. I would like to keep my heading, so I'm going to hit this, and now the carrier is going to control that all on its own. But if you'll see, moving at 43 knots. Not the best, but we can do better. All of a sudden, weapons are offline, and propulsion is now at max power, and we have almost doubled our speed. So, just for that nice little demonstration there. Now, if you would rather, you don't have to just straight flip the breaker on all weapons. You can come over here to the weapons screen, or to the weapons station, and you can start flipping off individual components, and that will proportionally reduce your power usage. That is also all important. The helm is not terribly difficult to manage. As you just saw, you select the helm and you can go forward and back to move up the throttle. But if you want to reverse, there is a button for reverse, which you will hit and then hit full throttle. And as you can see, you will start to back up. Now you back up more slowly than you go forward, but there you go. You can also use side thrusters, which ordinarily would control your heading, shifting left and right, but you can also turn on the side thrusters and then just move the wheel all the way to one side or all the way to the other. And as you can see up there on the display, it will cause your side thrusters to push you in that direction should you so desire. Very good for getting yourself out of beached situations. And there's also a steering lock, which I'm not going to employ at the moment, but you can set the side thrusters, swing that wheel all the way to the side, and then hit steering lock, and your carrier will continue to drift to the left or the right as you desire. There are a couple other things up here. This will give you your position on the water. So right now we're very flat. You can see we sort of are like listing now a bit to the right. There are some wave activity. So it'll show you your pitch, your yaw, and my goodness, your roll. There we go. Blanked on that for a second. And so the heading is something that you want to pay close attention to. That 320 is relative to north. If north is 0 degrees, as you see here, if north is 0, we are heading 320, which is roughly that away. So, say we want to head to Vatland. Well, let's head to Vatland. And while we're on the move, each of your navigation screens can be tuned to display different things. Generally speaking, I like having the wind, depth, and current. The wind will inform how my rotary craft will do with takeoff and landing, that sort of thing. And then the current can inform torpedoes and ocean craft, which we'll get to in a bit. Then, of course, we have the weapon screen, or the weapon station. So I'm actually going to turn that back on, because I'm not too worried about reaching our next island very quickly. So you have status for your anti-air, Sea Whiz, and your carrier missiles and your carrier gun. And then this button up here is specifically for torpedo countermeasures. We'll get to what that does in a bit. You have anti-air missiles, front left and right Sea Whiz, rear left and right Sea Whiz. The front cannot shoot towards the back. They're mounted up there at the fore of the ship, and you can't even see them from here, which means they can't see back here, so they can't shoot down units behind you. That's what the rear Sea Whiz is for. Where the rear Sea Whiz, again, you can't see it from here, is off the back of the ship, and that will shoot in that backwards direction, but it can't shoot forward. So for full Sea Whiz coverage, you've got all four. You have a flare launcher, which I don't believe we can see from in here. It's this teeny little gun that sort of sticks off the back end of those two, because that big pod right there that I'm looking at is the carrier cruise missile launcher, and that is your main deck gun, 160 millimeter. And that's what these two switches are for, cruise missiles and main gun. And then you have your torpedoes. Torpedoes are a bit complicated, but basically, you have an activation delay in number of seconds. This should never go below 30. It can go down to 10, it shouldn't. You need that amount of time. You need at least 30 seconds. That 30 seconds gives the torpedoes enough time to reach this number, the bearing. So if I want torpedoes to go towards this red line here on my radar screen, which hopefully shortly will have some naval units to display, so we can shoot some torpedoes and I can show that to you, then you want to have at least 30 seconds to give them a chance to turn on course and then go active to search for targets. And then you choose what you load and hit the button to fire. Now, once you've loaded something, you can't unload it. Even if it's, powered on, I wouldn't be able to unload a torpedo. So make sure that what you're loading is what you want, and don't do what I've done here and preload things, because that can cause you some problems if you're in the middle of a big firefight. These switches are pretty simple. They're just for some deck spotlights, and these are for some rear and front runway lights. It doesn't affect play with the AI. If you're playing PvP, maybe you want to keep these things turned off since they're mostly cosmetic, and it'll make it easier for them to spot you from a distance, just kind of eyeballing it. And then, of course, we get to our vehicle control screen. Air traffic, there's not too much going on here. It will inform you as to who's landing first, second, third, so on and so forth, and it shows you the holding patterns of different things. This little bit hanging off the side here. Ooh, music's changing, which means we are set for combat. give that just a second. So you have your holding patterns, one for rotary craft, since they can take off vertically and land vertically, and one for fixed wing craft, which need to sort of circle around. Now you'll notice the near end of that is on the right side of the carrier. That's important. When taking an island, especially an island that is 3 shield or higher, they're going to have anti-air. They're going to have Sea Whiz. And that will shoot down your air units without mercy, because they circle at 400 meters and Sea Whiz range is 800 meters. So make sure when you're, staging that you always point the right side of your carrier towards the island. It will make it much easier for you to retrieve your fixed-wing craft in the event of an emergency. You have some CCTV, not really all that helpful, although if you happen to get the UI mod, which I highly recommend, then this can actually show you some other things. You have an elevator status indicator that will show you if your elevator is moving. Right now mine is stationary, and a crane status. And then you have these. Now, you can use any of these 3 screens to control your vehicles. I typically use the middle one. Again, I usually play in multiplayer, so I leave this one here for my captain since it's closer to the helm, so if he needs to jump over and do something, he can, and I'm out of the way. Because I'm usually focusing on the vehicle control screen. Now, these buttons, as you can see, deploy your different chassis. You can deploy them with these buttons, but I don't really recommend it. Instead, if you go into the control screen, you can actually select your carrier, and you can see what each of your chassis has loaded. This is an older loadout. I don't use exactly this loadout anymore. For example, one of these should be loaded with a different weapon. But in general, this is one of the loadouts that I used to use. And it is tested, it's effective. I've just found more effective ways to run things. So right now, we have a naval vessel on the far side of the island, and this is a 3-shield island. That means there's probably multiple naval vessels out there. Now, I could send one of my Manta out there to handle it, load them up with, say, rockets, or this one has bombs and torpedoes. We could do that, but we're not going to do that. We're going to work on torpedoes so that I can, have a good demonstration of that. I think you can handle doing most of this stuff on your own for deciding. But if I wanted to, I could set a waypoint for something from that menu in order to launch it with a waypoint. Instead of having it, launch first and then give it a waypoint after it's launched, I can set it up to be fully autonomous and just get a move on. It'll save you a lot of time and energy if you, for example, I'm okay with risking a unit for this. Actually, I can just do it this way. If you, this is very haphazard. I do not normally do this. I'm just demonstrating. There. So now you can see there's a little rotation symbol that shows that it's when it reaches this point, it's going to rotate around this island at 400 meters and until it is told to do something otherwise. That something otherwise is going to be landing with me. The seas are surprisingly calm. That's good for us. And this also is a good example to show you that the elevator is down. The crane's already done its job. Should have. And the CCTV here might show you a glimpse of what's going on, although it's very, very low quality, which is kind of on purpose. So the elevator's coming up, as displayed. Now, again, I have a cosmetic mod on that makes it so that my units aren't that bright blue. They have a team color. But normally your units will be blue, and they'll show up here, and this is the perfect time to display. Here on your propulsion screen, you can see that the Manta is preparing to take off. So if you're on the helm, and you need to be, dodging something or determining, where this thing's going to launch so it doesn't crash into a wave as it launches, you can keep an eye here, watch it for it to be on sling, and watch it launch, and at the same time, there it goes. So now it's going to head over to those waypoints and return to us. And in the meantime, we need to reposition because we have 2 naval units that need to be dealt with. Now, if I were a wizard like my captain, I would be able to shoot those torpedoes and have them sort of curve around the island and strike the targets anyway. I am not. I'm usually the one flying those mantas. So I would much rather do that. But I'm going to show the torpedoes anyway, even if I am terrible with them because it's important to demonstrate how the torpedoes actually just work. By the way, at this point, I've completely abandoned looking over the guide, so hopefully I haven't rambled too much or anything. I've just kind of decided it's probably better to show things more organically than the alternative. So, we can see our Manta down there to the, it's not really the southeast, or no, this should show absolute direction, north, so that should be to our southeast. We can see a barge to the, or southwest. A barge was to the southeast, Manta's to the southwest, and we have units that are roughly to our north. And you see that red line there. That red line is your torpedo bearing. The green line is your carrier heading. Those are displayed differently for a reason. It lets you know which side to fire off of the carrier. So we're going to adjust our heading before we run aground here. And we want to get back out roughly into open water and prepare to fire those torpedoes. Oh, okay, so the Manta has queued for landing. That means it's on its way back. That's good. That tells me to expect it. It's coming in. And I'm going to arm weapons, which is going to slow us down. I'm going to do that on purpose, because that allows the Manta an easier time to land. Landing in rough seas for fixed-wing craft is very dangerous. They can and will crash into waves or the side of the carrier and be destroyed. You don't want to lose units over stuff like that. Right, so you can hear the sound, and now this thing is turned red, which means it is landing, and you can see it come out of the holding pattern. And you can also see the amount of fuel that it has. Now, if you have the UI mod, this will also show you how much ammo it has, HP, that sort of thing. It's very helpful. I do, again, highly recommend it. So, we are trying to move into position here to where we can shoot torpedoes at these guys. They haven't started moving yet, which is a bit strange to me. This is a very old save. I'm kind of curious if somehow one of the updates made them aggro from further away, especially to air units. But they're outside of the old detection range when this save was made, which was 5,000 meters, and as you can see, they're not moving. And I know they're not moving because you can see motion on the carrier, or motion on the holo map, through something like this. So, as you've seen already, you click and drag from different units to give them following orders. I have prepared a whole fleet of needlefish out here for the naval demonstration in a bit, but giving a unit a waypoint back to the carrier will automatically cause it to land. Units cannot follow the carrier. They can follow those naval units, though. We'll get to the needlefish shortly. Alright, let's see. Are we far enough yet? No, not quite. Okay, well the Manta's back, so it's safe to move into deeper water where there'll be larger waves, so let's do exactly that. By the way, Ribbons, that's why I said we should leave the breakers right there. And I'm going to link this to you specifically to show you that, to make a point. I'm pretty sure I already made the point, but I just thought of it, so. Anyway, you can see the units are sort of flickering there. That should be because they're bobbing in and out of the water, and your radar won't detect enemy units under the water, which shouldn't happen, but it does because the waves are kind of violent. We should be good to fire now, I think. Yeah? Yep. Okay. So, torpedoes. Torpedoes have a locking angle. Once they go active, that locking angle means that anything in there, your own barges, your own carrier, doesn't matter what, it will lock onto it. That's important, because it means that you want them to go active after they've passed by any potential allies, so 30 seconds may not be enough. I'm going to leave it on the 30 seconds for the first torpedo, just to demonstrate. But we want to adjust the heading here. Make sure you have the radar screen in view. We want to adjust the heading. I'm going to tend to eyeball this one because we have this island here. And coming from the carrier... Oh no, we should be able to fire it directly. Let's say we'll call it 36. Right? So let's come over here. And... Alright. So now we're on 36. We're on target. We got 30 seconds. And we want to fire off the right side. I'm going to fire our first torpedo, load a second one, and I'm going to give this one a 90-second delay. And fire. Now, and again, don't preload things like I did there. It's a bad idea. I'm just an idiot. So, we don't know what these are. These are unscanned units. I have no idea if these are needlefish, swordfish. You know, those are the two variants that we have. So needlefish only take 1 torpedo to kill. Swordfish take 2. So maybe we'll get a kill with this volley, maybe we won't. But as you can see, one of our torpedoes has already gone active. It's blinking red, looking for targets. The other one is still on its delay. There's no current here, but if there were, you would notice that this active torpedo would start getting pushed by the current off course. As long as it's inactive and not searching for targets, it stays directly on the path that you've given it, directly on that heading. Once that timer runs out, oh, they fired a countermeasure. Once that timer runs out, it can be affected by other things such as this noisemaker. So whatever this thing is, it has a torpedo tube, and it will use those torpedo tubes to misdirect the torpedoes. And as you can see here, torpedoes picked it up on the locking angle and has started to curve away from the target, and it's lost lock-on. However, the other one, since it's inactive, was not affected by the noisemaker, and is still making its way towards the target, where it will become active when the timer runs out. Now that first noisemaker wore off, so the target has launched a second noisemaker. That second noisemaker is going to pull this thing off course. It's within the locking angle. The locking angle is roughly 25 degrees. And there it goes. So we're not going to be getting any kills with these torpedoes right now. It's pretty difficult to actually get proper kills with torpedoes. And I'm not the best with them, as I said. So we want to move to using something else. An aerial unit. This is more my specialty. This is something that I like doing. And now we're going to work through changing over our loadouts a bit. And I'll be, after this, tutorial engagement, I'll actually explain what all of these different things are in a little bit of detail for each one. And we'll go through it actually using the inventory screen here. So that way we cover each and every single thing, and if you have a question about any of these things, it should all be covered in that section of the video. So it'll be easy to find and easy to reference in the future. For now, let's set up A7 to go take out a naval unit. So we've got heavy bombs in here. I'm actually going to leave those, partially to test and partially to demonstrate. There's a very good chance that I actually get shot down here, by the way, because I'm going to do some risky stuff instead of playing it safe and making it easy. Now, it is technically possible to, say, launch an Albatross and launch it with some IR missiles and just tell it to go, blow something up. And if you spam it with enough missiles, then the Sea Whiz can't really stop all those attacks, and you'll have your success. I'm still surprised that they're not moving. They're definitely behaving like they used to. That's a bit strange to me. That's something I should definitely add on the issue tracker. Hitting this button will take you to the developer's page where they do pay attention to bug reports and feature requests, sort of. Generally speaking, a lot of people request features that are really out of scope for a game like this. And so I feel like the developers usually just kind of go like, oh yeah, okay, that's nice, and they just kind of move on. So feature requests, try and keep in mind what kind of game you're playing, So we have to wait for this thing to be fully loaded before it'll launch. By the way, things will not launch if they don't have enough ammo to launch. So say if I didn't have enough rockets for this thing to fully load itself, which luckily I do, then it would bring up this red exclamation mark and blink there, and it would not launch, no matter how badly I wanted it to. Same with fuel. However, they will launch even if they're damaged, so keep that in mind. So, we have a unit that we would like to go and send on an attack. So, give it the waypoint, launch it, and you can, if you want, do something like this, where you can choose what to do. I don't recommend doing this for naval units. Naval units are very dangerous and will happily shoot down all of your AI at their earliest convenience. You either want to get really good using torpedoes, or you want to get really good at manually controlling them. Try not to send AI after ships. It will end poorly. And once the ships are down, then you want to start taking out the island. Generally the phases that you want, where capturing an island requires you to take out the naval units, scan for enemy targets on the island, ground units, scan for turrets, all that sort of thing, and then move in, take out as many units as you possibly can, all of them preferably, and then move in for the capture, send in your virus bots. That is how you capture an island. You need to have a surface unit. You need to have a surface unit with this virus bot attachment. Each of these are a one-time use thing. You get this little guy close, you launch him onto the island, and then he can deploy virus bots, which will capture the island's command post for your side. Works the same at all times. So, here we go. Now, here's where this game is for me. I'm not too huge on RTS games. I've played a few, and I generally just kind of, I'm a very casual player of those sorts of games. So you would think that this kind of game, half simulation, half RTS, isn't really for me. But you'd be wrong, because it's not half and half, it's in thirds. Here's the other third. You can take full control of a vehicle. Now, I thought, originally, that you had to control each node independent of each other. Okay, so we've got two needlefish here. This one, clearly, is going to have some kind of torpedoes and something else, and we have no idea what this thing has. It hasn't fired any noisemakers, so we're unsure. Now, even a light bomb will take these things out. Oh, it's got an anti-air missile. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and take control, and we're going to dodge this missile real quick. Our countermeasures are going off. Countermeasures will trigger automatically, so no need to worry about that. Now, rockets at the moment are the most powerful thing in the game. And they are the most powerful thing partially because of how many of them you can carry. I have 19 of them, and also partially because of the damage that they deal and how much they weigh. You can't aim them perfectly. You kind of just have to spam and hope you get the kill. But we're going to assume that this other needlefish has Sea-Whiz, and we're going to go ahead and rise out of its range. Sea-Whiz range is 800 meters. So, before I approach at 800, I want to make sure that I'm moving at a sufficient speed to survive long enough to shoot the thing down. So here we go. So that's generally how I deal with those types of units. I would much prefer to use something like bombs or missiles or rockets. So let's head back towards the island. And I'm just going to manually deploy a bomb here. I'm going to raise altitude again, go for a bombing run, and we're just going to go ahead and slap something. Look at, there's a huge convoy right there, right? And we can see where the bomb's going to land through that little indicator. And we're going to assume that these guys are going to get a little hung up right about there. Now I can hear them all firing at me. Dropped my bomb. I'm going to raise altitude, try and get up to 2,000 meters, or as close to 2,000 meters as I can. 2,000 is where the stall limit is, so I'm just going to let it go, and you'll see. Stall, my velocity starts plummeting there on the left side of the screen, and I've gone all the way up to 2,700 because man, these manta are crazy in how fast they can go. And now it's just falling, and I have no control over it. Once it drops back down to a sufficient height, I should regain control and be able to recover. So, do keep your altitude in mind while manually controlling. I'm going to set it to automatic, and I want it to patrol this island. So, while I've got it all the way up there, I'm going to go ahead and start setting it waypoints. Again, normally this is something I would do with an albatross, but as I showed earlier, you set up a route like this, and your unit will start to automatically pace the island. And you can start doing things like this, where you want to start off by doing this sort of thing, where you're just, getting each diamond of the units. You don't need full scans just yet, because while it's at night, as you can see, they have their headlights on. But when the sun comes up, those headlights turn off. And without the headlights on, it's a lot more difficult to spot targets, especially if they blend in with the terrain at all. This is a snowy island. Would make it easier to spot units, even if it were in the daytime, as they would show up as little black dots. But in like a wooded island, for example, or on a volcanic island, they can be more difficult to see. The red blinking light is your command post, and they can have turrets. This is one I'm going to actually fully scan, so you see there are stationary turrets. Now, I don't like that thing, and I want it gone. Who wouldn't? The first thing we're going to do is now that we've got our scout ready to go, we're going to go ahead and move towards the island. We can see now there's no more naval presence. That Manta has AWACS, which is its own radar system, mirrors the carrier's capabilities out to 10,000 meters. It will detect, not scan, it will detect and mark naval units and aerial units, not ground units. You have to get a visual on those in order to actually ID them. So do be careful sending your units in assuming that an island is barren. There are no barren islands. Except the ones that you capture, because the player is not allowed to, manufacture their own defenses for an island. Actually, on that note, if you do happen to capture an island, and you have not destroyed all of the turrets, as you can see, any surviving turrets will convert to your team, which is very helpful. So, if you don't want to do something else that I haven't tested, and we're going to test together in this video, then you can go ahead and try and capture an island with at least one turret surviving. That way you have some kind of an early warning system should the enemy carrier arrive to try and capture your island. My enemy carrier should be about here right now. I've been tracking their progress, and they've gone from Terminus now to Frontier. So I should have a rough idea of where they are. So, we are going to pull alongside the island, and we're in kind of a current dead zone, as you can see at the moment. It's all dark there, so I don't have to worry too much about the current. Ordinarily, I would try and put the carrier on a side of the island that is affected the least by the current, in the current shadow. That keeps the carrier nice and stable so that I know where it is at all times, and it's not getting bullied by the current and pushed away from the island for whatever reason. And it also means that any ground units that I launch out into the water, which I'm going to be doing very shortly, will have an easier time of navigation, because they can't fight the current nearly as well as the carrier can. Let's go ahead and move into position a little more quickly. I want to try and get this depth sonar to detect something, so that we have that to demonstrate, because it's probably one of the first sounds you're going to hear your carrier make when you launch your first new game. Is you're going to hear the depth radar screaming at you as the carrier is launched, because you're technically over ground. But, you know, at least at that point, you're in no danger, although you can absolutely beach your carrier if you're not careful. The carrier cannot float in anything that is that yellow color or darker. We're going to see about getting close enough to that to set this off, and then we will stop the carrier. Here we go. So now you can see there's something showing up on the depth sonar. We can see the sandbar right there. I don't want to actually beach the carrier, but there we go. So we have found our position. Oh. And you see, so now I'm using Apocalypse's sound mod, partially because I really do enjoy it, but also partially out of some strange sense of spite, because he can't maintain it anymore. That's a whole other thing. But, so, yeah, that would be the depth sonar going off and getting very upset at me because I'm about to beach the carrier. We don't want that. So now, we can turn weapons back on, and we're going to launch 2 units. I'm going to demonstrate first that you're going to want artillery, which should be S4 here. So we want to get ground artillery on station, but ground artillery can't defend itself. Now, it shouldn't have to defend itself from any other ground units, but what may end up happening is the existing ground units might launch an IR missile at it. So to make sure that it's covered, we're going to also launch our Sea-Whiz Seal. So that guy's there, and we have our Sea-Whiz Seal here coming down out of our vehicle bay and into the water to go and follow after him. So we'll go ahead and give him a follow order so he can stick with that bear. Now, support. Calling in support from a gimbal or observation camera, or if you really want to, you can also use the carrier's viewing scope here just underneath the radar to scan targets and to also call in weapons. Now you can see that there's something switching on and off there. There's different types of tracking. I would recommend using tracking mode when you're going to be taking a shot, and you can cycle through different weapons. So we're going to be using ground artillery. CRR missile, carrier missile, that's a cruise missile. They're slow moving, very powerful, and extremely long range. You can send a scout out to a completely different island, and I think the maximum range is 16,500 meters. Very far. The carrier gun is 5 shells. It's always 5 shells from that gun right there, and it fires in a burst. It's somewhat inaccurate, especially while the carrier is moving or affected heavily by the current, but it's extremely powerful, good at taking out convoys. You have carrier flares, which can help you light up a dark island at night. You have ground artillery, which fires a single shell every few seconds once it acquires the target, and it takes a very long time for those shells to land, so best used on stationary targets, which is why we're going to use it on a stationary turret. And then you have guided missiles, which are laser-guided missiles that function exactly like carrier missiles. They're just weaker, and they come from air units that are carrying them. So, let's call in an artillery strike before we recall this Manta, because it's starting to run low on fuel. So, we have our turret here. Now, I'm just going to eyeball real quick. Yeah, so there's another turret there. I'm going to specifically not scan that for the moment. So, we want to hit this thing. Oop, I turned off the stabilization. Wrong button. We want to hit this thing with ground artillery. So, you click or pull your trigger, and you can see it's targeting, and 1 shell's fired, so now it's 39 out of 40. And second shell fired, cancel your support. Hit that fire button again, because it'll just keep firing. It doesn't care whether the target's dead or not. You are requesting the support. It doesn't know what you're requesting the support for. It's automatic. So you only need 2 shells to take out a turret. 1 shell should do the trick for basically any other unit. And look at how long it takes for that shell to land. Half health. Boom. There you go. So now, we have a couple things we can demonstrate. This log up here will show you when you've defeated targets. There's the 2 needlefish that we defeated. I dropped that bomb earlier. I did not confirm what I had destroyed. I had only seen that there was a bunch of enemies there. I defeated a seal and a walrus. And just now, I destroyed the turret. You can see the timestamps for those things, so you know when these things happened. So you can, suss out kind of what's going on relative to one or the other. So we don't want this Manta to run out of fuel. So we're going to go ahead and give it a recall order. Given that I know the ship's heading, I would like for it to approach, hopefully to actually land on the first try, because I don't want it to potentially fly over whatever this unit is, because I don't have it scanned. So, just out of curiosity, say that were to happen. What is this little guy? That is a bear. I can tell that just by looking at it. That seems to be a bear with a heavy cannon. Doesn't say what kind. Again, highly recommend getting that UI mod so that you can get some better ideas of what's going on with your enemy. Oh, and you can see the rockets that I spent from the pod there. If you turn off tracking and then you set something to automatic, it will reset the camera, which can be very helpful because actually zooming in yourself takes all this time, and zooming back out takes just as much time. But if I hit the automatic, it immediately zooms back out and comes back down straight. Oh, right. So, I forgot. So I told this thing that it needs to be down at 200 meters. As you can see, it's definitely not down at 200 meters. And once it's in the pattern to withdraw, it goes into override mode, so I can't take manual control. I really don't like having this thing at high altitude when it's trying to come back, because that means that it's going to take forever for it to land. So I'm going to manually drop its altitude and then give it the return order, and hopefully that will cause it to directly land. So you need a gimbal camera to be marking targets like that. As you can see, this top slot, like towards the nose of each of these units, all have a gimbal camera except for this Razorbill. Razorbills are probably the first units you'll get used to using. They are fast, light rotaries. They're very squishy, but they can carry countermeasures. This is an older save. I don't have it equipped with countermeasures. So what we're going to do, we are going to do... Oh, actually, we're going to see... Oh, no. Manta's not going to actually come in for the landing. Okay, so we couldn't force the landing. It's going to have to come back around. So we'll wait for that thing to land. In the meantime, you can see what units are deployed here. Something that I've probably should have set up quite a while ago. Oh yeah, see? Flew over the island. Triggered a warning that it was under attack. Hasn't actually been shot down. Oh, we've got ships moving in from our north. Haven't been keeping them on screen. They were probably detected by the Manta as it flew out because we didn't have them on radar here. They must have been just beyond 10,000 meters. So there's a demonstration for the AWACS. Unintentional, but helpful. Okay, so let's see. Because they should start disappearing, and... oh, there we go. So there's the last known position. If a unit ever leaves your field of view or leaves your radar, you get last known positions. There's also a couple now on the island because now the Manta is too low altitude to spot these units. So, I'm starting to get a little worried about our fleet over here. So while we're waiting on that Manta to land, we can go ahead and demonstrate this. These guys are in heavy current, and they all have different armaments. These things have different following mechanics than anything else in the game. When you order one of these units to follow one another, it will always start with back left. Let me do this, in reference to the camera. It'll go back left and then back right. And so you'll have a center unit. The first one will show up down here, the next one will show up here, and the next one will show up even further down to the back left, and the next one will be even further to the back right. If you don't want that, which I don't, and you would rather a proper formation, then what you can do is you can order these to follow until you've got 3 of them following. So number 1, number 2, and number 3, where number 1 is the lead, number 2 is back left, number 3 is back right, and now if you have number 4 follow back right, it's going to move to the back left of number 3, which means it is going to be directly behind number 1. So now we have the 4 in a proper formation. Oh, and the next thing we wanted... Oh no, that's just us getting too close to the island again. Whoopsie! We'll handle that. Here, in fact, let's go ahead and lock that steering for a moment and move us away from the island. I thought we had actually gotten them to launch an air unit at us. So, those alarms, very helpful. Okay, so, now your units, your naval units, will avoid islands as much as possible, but unfortunately they won't avoid each other as well, so you can see these guys tend to bump into each other once in a while. Honestly, it's kind of funny. But I'm going to go ahead and start setting up a bit of a follow order so that these needlefish eventually make their way all the way over here to me. They should make it. Should make it. I'm going to go ahead and give them an order for out in the open water. And we'll deal with the following orders later, but this is generally something that you want to have done. Well, here, we'll do that. At least make an attempt at follow orders. I say an attempt because I'm going to then immediately abandon that and just get all these guys moving. Because I would like to make a follow-up video to this at some point that actually shows more in depth some of these things. So we've got them on the move towards us. And now we don't have a scout, so the only things that are still marked are things that are visible from the ship's scope. And we still have our bear and seal just hanging out there. So now we know that there are some naval units hanging out to the north that could potentially be a threat for later. Important to keep that in mind. So we're going to need another scout, so you would launch your new scout. I'm going to go ahead and set that thing up at 1250, and then give it its route here. Now, I've told it to go to 1250. It's not going to immediately get to 1250. The Albatross, unlike the Manta, sort of handles like a mid-air freight train. It is very slow. It's very stable. Makes it good for gun runs, manual gun runs, where the Manta is much harder to control. But the Albatross instead has much better fuel efficiency. Can't carry as much fuel, and it'll stay in the air for a shorter amount of time, but it'll use a lot less fuel to do that. And it also cannot carry countermeasures. So when you're going to launch one of these things, you generally want to give it a much longer time to get to maximum altitude than this. I'm going to manually take control of it and get it to the target altitude, but generally speaking, if you're going to do this, you want it to come away from the carrier and go way far away from the island to get to its actual intended height, because you want to keep it out of range of enemy Sea Whiz. There is no keeping out of range of enemy anti-air in terms of height. If you send a plane to fly out over these things and it gets to 5,000 meters, they will launch anti-air missiles if they have them, and the AI will not dodge them. If you have a Manta and you're depending on those countermeasures to deal with the anti-air missiles, you may be disappointed. It has happened. It's rare, but it's possible. So, generally inadvisable. So here we go. I can hear it launching. There it goes. So once it's in the air, I'm going to go ahead and take quick control of it, switch over to vehicle control, switch it to manual, and I'm just going to nose this thing up. It won't stall. It I mean, it'll lower its speed quite a bit, as you can see, but it's not in any danger of stalling. It will continue to just go up, and now, once I hit roughly 900, I can go ahead and switch that back to automatic, and it should level itself out right around a safe altitude. And it's going to continue climbing to the 1250, and it is going to enter into the pattern that we have it set. And now, as you can see, all of those last known positions are gone because now we have a new camera up that can go ahead and reveal those targets for us. I'm surprised that this island hasn't launched any air units at us. I was kind of hoping that it would, so that I could show you, you can just kind of walk over here and fire an anti-air missile. And, it takes a while for them to reload, but it can handle it. Okay, we're far enough away. Now I can go ahead and undo that. And because I had the steering lock, we've just kind of drifted a bit. So we're facing a little strangely. It's a really good thing that I took manual control of that albatross, because it was about to fly directly over the island. I wasn't paying enough attention. That would have ended very poorly. So 2 shield and 1 shield islands are not going to have any anti-air capabilities. A 2 shield island may have a naval unit, but half the time they don't. It's kind of up in the air on that one. But they will not have any Sea Whiz. 3 shield and 4 shield islands are guaranteed to have Sea Whiz. Do not assume they do not. Don't take that chance. You'll lose units. So, we've got another naval unit. They're currently patrolling this island, apparently, because now we still have the 2 last known positions, but now we have a 3rd unit. One of these would have updated to this new position if it were, in fact, the same unit. So we know that Magma now has 3 naval units. I'm going to go ahead and cut right about here, because ordinarily this would be where I start launching units to take these guys out. But for a beginner's guide to get you to exactly like where you would need to be to start, your own experimentation and practicing using units, I've now shown you how to call in support, how to handle all of that sort of stuff. So the last thing I want to do is just, real quick, show you these menus here, where I've spent some flares. Not necessarily spent, maybe they've just been loaded onto a new unit, but I would like to order 8 flares. Okay, so there's the 8 flares. But I don't have any that are actually in storage, as you can see there. They're not in any of my warehouses. I do have some pending order, but they're not coming just yet. I haven't made them. I had an order out for fuel, but it's already been picked up by a barge, and it's currently in transit. When it gets here, it'll be added to the carrier stock. That is going to affect the carrier weight, which is up top. You have a weight capacity. Pay very close attention to that weight capacity. You cannot receive new items when you reach it. So I would like 8 flares. Now, ordinarily, I would not take care of this part. It would be my captain, but since I'm the only one here, I believe those are small munitions. Alright, so I want 8 flares. It takes 10 seconds to make them. They weigh 10 kilos, and they cost a single credit to make. Very cheap. I only need 8 of them to finish out my very, admittedly, meticulous setup for the stock. So, now as you can see, one's been made, and it's displayed as in storage. Now, I would like to receive these flares sometime this century. How would I do that? Well, I set a waypoint from a barge that happens to be nearby. That down arrow shows that it's going to load, and then I drag from there to the carrier, much like I would for attack orders or go orders for other units, and it will come and it will deliver those to the carrier. I've also got another barge here. This is the barge that should, as you can see, have all that fuel, but it doesn't have a waypoint set. The waypoint is for it to go back and forth, picking up new fuel, to make sure that it picked up all that fuel. But if you drag from a unit not from any of the waypoints, from a unit, it will override all of its previous waypoints and go straight to the new waypoint. So I'd like to receive all of that fuel. Unfortunately, I missed, so now I have to actually go back and do it like this. Oh, no, it's... okay. Go like that. So it should clear all of its previous waypoints. So that's just the general basics. Now, islands cannot receive items. Islands can only output items, but as long as you don't actually order the item from the island, it will just sit in the island storage forever. If the enemy carrier happens to show up and take that island, you will lose those resources. So you should be careful about that. Now, again, tracking my enemy. They've taken burn. I'm going to do something a little bit strange to end the video. First, I'm going to go ahead and save before I do this, because I don't really want to commit to this, but I can go ahead and make the attempt anyway. These mantas are very good at long range, and they're equipped with AWACS, so I can just go ahead and max this thing out on altitude, and we're going to go ahead and send it through Allied territory towards burn. Will it get there before I end the video? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But I do want to start wrapping things up. So we have a Manta preparing for a long-range scouting mission. As you'll notice, I didn't load it with any fuel tanks. That would be because these are terrible. Don't use them. Wasn't going to go over any of that, but, you know, so there you go. It should have plenty of fuel to make the trip and come back. These things have an insane range. Just out of curiosity, let's get a range on that. Yeah, it's 110 kilometers that I'm sending that thing. Right? Oh, no. I was looking at the X coordinate. 60K. So 60K, perfectly fine. 140 kilometers is roughly their round trip, I think. So it should be well within its capability to make it all the way there and come all the way back. Okay, we've got 4 units surrounding magma. Let's make sure you're not going over the island. You're not. Alright, so the Manta should not actually get within range of these guys. As you can see, it's at about 7,000 meters, and this is lateral. That doesn't account for its altitude. So Manta's perfectly safe on its current route. Now, it may be threatened as it passes between these 2 islands, but we'll get to that when we get to that. We have our fleet here, still on the way, just to check their fuel. They're at 80%. They did recently buff up the fuel efficiency of those things, which is very much appreciated. It allows for something like this to actually be possible. And as we can see here, we have somebody who's gotten a little curious about our ground artillery. So I'm going to go ahead and move him out closer to us again. As you can see, as I'm dragging this thing, it will show the effective range of that artillery gun. It'll do that with any weapon. You can't directly control the artillery gun, unfortunately. Okay, so here comes our barge. Alright, should be carrying our 8 entire flares. 80 kilos out of the 200,000 that it could be carrying. But we're not here to necessarily push any boundaries. So all of that should give you the necessary skills to run your own game. I suppose the one last thing I should cover is I'm going to go ahead and launch this petrol. Oh, entered that thing's range there for a little bit. If you drag from a petrol, not any other unit, has to be a petrol specifically, to a surface unit, you'll get this green line, and that petrol will airlift that unit. If I then give it a return order, which now you're not going to see, what that petrol is going to do is it's going to get brought up the elevator here. A rotary unit, like a Razor Bill or a petrol, will reach the top of the elevator and will launch immediately from there. No runway necessary. High seas, not a problem. High winds, not a problem. Not like fixed-wing craft. There he goes. He's just going to directly take off from the deck. Going to approach that waypoint, and then is going to go and pick up our unit here. Now, before he does that, I'm going to take some direct control, just temporarily, because that's a threat. We don't like threats. IR missiles are usually very unreliable. I fully expect this to not work. Okay, so threat eliminated. IR missiles are very good, that sort of thing, at least, taking out something that is an immediate threat. And they can be ordered through AI control as well. But I just wanted to make sure that that was out of the way so that our units aren't actually being threatened. So let's see, can we spot our friends? No, we really can't. Oh, there they are. So there's the bear and seal hanging out in the water. Let me go ahead and stabilize that so I don't make you sick. I know that can bother some people. So the pickup range, if I remember correctly, is 12 meters. So this thing is going to stop several times on its way down and try and very carefully just pluck that thing out of the water. This is something that is being done automatically. Of course, I'm not in control of this. I haven't actually tried manually airlifting a target. You would have to give the AI the order to do it, but then to actually like do the flying myself, I don't think I've ever done it. Alright, and there it goes. So, go ahead and turn off the tracking so the camera resets, and now our friend the petrol here is going to return. And I'll order the seal back on its own. As you see, it plots its own course to come into the back of the ship. Now, a petrol can and will land while carrying a ground unit. So you don't have to worry about actually calling them back through the water. You can save yourself a lot of time. Petrols are very, very helpful. Highly important units. If you don't happen to start off with them unlocked, which is likely, then you want to aim for an air chassis island as quickly as possible and try and get yourself one of those. Watch that thing, it's going to phase right through the deck. Here we go. Zoop! And it's gone. And as you can see, now its bay is occupied again. Down here it was S4, so S4 is occupied, and the petrol touches down immediately afterwards. Nice and clean. So, let's check on that Manta, and we'll see if we get a good ending for our video. Oh, not quite. It's gonna be a minute. Well, I'm willing to stick around if you are. If not, scroll to the end of the video. I don't think I'm gonna have too much more important to say here in terms of, like, you know, player guide, but I am going to just move through some general operations here on my own. For example, I would really like to change my loadouts for things, starting with these guys. I generally like to have something like a chain gun. It's, you know, a very cheap and effective way of dealing with some stray targets. I like to have something for self-defense. In a petrol's case, one of the biggest threats to it is another air unit, so having an anti-air missile mounted on it can be very helpful. And then the 2 rockets for its main damage. This is an ideal situation. This is not always going to be the case. Light bombs can be just as useful. They do more damage than a single torpedo does, which means they will destroy a needlefish straight out of the water with a direct hit, and any ground unit with a direct hit, except for a turret. Turrets have a lot of health, and I think it even takes 2 medium bombs to kill them, if I'm not mistaken. Don't normally use bombs to deal with those. You'll notice that I carry more anti-air missiles than anything else, and that would be because, aside from rockets, that would be because if one of these islands launches a unit, I'd like to be able to just hit this button and not even think about how many of those things I have. Because enemy air units are one of the biggest threats to the carrier because of things like rocket pods. And the enemy AI will just fountain all of its rockets, and it may launch with 4 rocket pods, each with 19 rockets apiece, and each rocket does the same damage as an IR missile. So, go ahead and do the math. 4 times 19 IR missiles in the form of rockets that are too fast to be shot down by your Sea Whiz on a Manta speeding towards you that is capable of carrying countermeasures to dodge your anti-air missiles. Not a good combination. Not something you want to risk. But it does also mean that you can carry that sort of firepower as well. Now, as you can see, the Albatross is starting to run out of fuel. So we want to give it a new order to come off and return so that we can replace it before we start our attack runs. So those two are good to go. I think I'm just going to leave this other Petrel who just returned with the 4 IR missiles, rather than actually touching on any of his capabilities. And we're going to go ahead and send this thing out. Now, you'll notice I don't hear the sound of the engine. It beeped, but nothing's actually showing up. Well, that would be because the carrier ought to prioritize... Oh, I just don't hear the engine because it's not an air unit. In the event that this Albatross were already on the return there, and it were actually on our air traffic, it would have prevented this thing from launching. Actually, I can just go ahead and hit another button. You see how it's solid yellow, not blinking yellow. So this thing is queued to launch, but it's not actually launching. So you can still cancel that. I can't cancel this. Once it starts blinking, you're kind of just locked in. And yeah, Albatross wasn't able to drop altitude far enough in time to actually land on the first pass. That's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use a Petrel now as my scout. And as you can see, the Petrel is much better about actually reaching the target altitude quickly. It's already out of range of any potential Sea Whiz targets. I'm going to go ahead and once again take direct control, lower the throttle temporarily, prime 2 IR missiles, lock target, fire, and hope that they actually land correctly like they should. And then switch it back to automatic before things get a little hairy. So there's nothing in the hangar here, and I'm a little curious about that, but... Oh, somebody's firing. Oh, so there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off that, leave our scout in the air, and I'm hitting that button one too many times because we actually want to check over here. Now, miraculously, I left that Manta without any supervision, and it has completed its mission fantastically. It has reached the last known location of our enemy carrier. It took a while to connect to it. So let's see if we can't eyeball the enemy carrier out there somewhere. I see a set of lights. So that is on bearing 137. That could just be this other island here. Oh, something's launched a countermeasure down there. Whatever could that mean? Oh, do you hear that? You might not, I don't know. I don't actually know how well I audio balanced, but that music change is the sound of an enemy carrier. And there they are. As you can see, they're prepping another unit, air unit to launch. There's your main target. Well, now that I see them, I'm gonna go say hello, and we'll see how this video ends. It won't be with a carrier kill, I can tell you that much. This one Manta is not carrying nearly enough firepower to take down the enemy carrier. What it is, though, is carrying enough firepower to damage the enemy carrier for a really good demonstration. Now, the enemy carrier really likes using cruise missiles to attack islands, and as you can see, it's just fired an anti-air missile at me. It's also got Sea Whiz. Let's go ahead and drop those, and possibly lose the Manta. Just trying to dodge Sea Whiz here. Get the heck out. Alright. I managed to survive that. I'm going to set this back to automatic now that it's out of range of the Sea Whiz specifically. And set the tracking. And have a look. Did we happen to hit anything? Did we get any good damage? Hard to say. At the very least, no components were destroyed. There's nothing smoking. So, unfortunate. Oh, and they've also launched another anti-air missile. Which I'm going to go ahead and throw off, because I'd like to actually retrieve this Manta. Oof! Look at how little health that thing has left. So they're going to go ahead and attack Lingard. I did damage them. You can see their health bar sort of in there. It's got a little tick taken off of it. But it's very likely that they'll take that island, and there's nothing I can really do about that. My carrier's too far away. I don't really have any way to directly challenge them. So that'll be where I end the video, but that's a good demonstration of what happens when you spot the enemy carrier and how to take a potential attack against it. Still very difficult to actually do. I'm really surprised I didn't lose the Manta to that. I was honestly kind of expecting to. But hey, we get to end the video with the Manta on return. I guess one of their air units, for a little while there, considered following the Manta. But now if we check the fuel, look at that, it's at 51%. It spends a lot more fuel traveling at max throttle. It greatly reduces the fuel efficiency, so that just that little bit of time that I had there doing some evasive maneuvers and whatnot burned a lot of fuel. It should, however, have enough fuel to make the return trip. So let's wish that thing luck, and I wish you luck on any of your future endeavors. If you need me, you can, of course, just leave a comment here. I'll try and answer. I do also have the guide up on Steam, which I'll leave a link to in the description. And I'm in the MicroPros official Discord as well. I'll leave my Discord name also in the comments if you'd like to just send me a DM. Good luck. If you have trouble with engagements, or you would like something like actually just demonstrated to you that I, for whatever reason, didn't actually interact with in the video, go ahead and let me know. And I'll hop in and try to help you out. I enjoy playing this game. I just don't really have a reason to usually. You know, we've kind of already done everything. I kind of just have to spend more time manually controlling ground units and manually controlling, or not manually controlling naval units, but actually getting the kills on naval units. The next one should be 100, and again, my captain's kind of a wizard with torpedoes, so I don't usually get to take out naval units. But, yeah, I'm perfectly happy being a mercenary if you need me, so. Good luck with your campaigns. Good luck with, you know, figuring all this stuff out for yourself. I'm 100% positive there are those of you out there that will find many other ways to handle all of these problems on your own. And a lot of the stuff that I've done here is sort of in an ideal situation. You should never expect to be in an ideal situation. You'll be unlocking blueprints for a lot of this stuff, and you know, testing out other weapon systems and seeing what works best for your playstyle. I can at least assure you that it'll be well worth the time spent if you enjoy these sorts of games. So, good luck on the high seas, and maybe I'll see you out there.